So we got 9 seconds to go. Oh, we're live. Hey, well, hello, everyone. It looks like we're live. Well, hello, and welcome to Talent Smart's EQ LinkedIn Live series, Emotional Intelligence for Your Everyday Life. We would love to know where you all are joining us from today. So if you're okay with it, will you just let us say hello to us in the chat and where you're dropping in from? We have a terrific discussion today on driving trust and collaboration through teams, strategies for success. And got some folks coming in from different parts of the country. So thank you all for joining us. Before I introduce my guests, let me just tell you a little bit about Talent Smart. We're the world's premier provider of emotional intelligence assessments and programs around the world. We're based in San Diego, California, and I am Gregory Campbell, Vice President of Law Enforcement and Government for the organization, and I'm based in Dallas, Texas. In my 27 years of leadership, I have led teams at the frontline level, mid-level level, executive and senior executive level. So welcome to our session today. Now allow me to introduce my guests. First is Captain Randy Moody. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience, and he began his career in 1992 with the Greene County Juvenile Office in Springfield, Missouri, as a youth leader and deputy juvenile officer. In 1996, he actually joined the Aurora Police Department, where he now serves as the captain overseeing organizational development. That's where I had my opportunity to meet my friend Randy. Previously, Captain Moody led the department's training academy, field training program, and leadership development program, and served as a deputy commander in Aurora PD's District 3 station. Also joining me today is Sergeant Shane Blaylock from the Florence Police Department in Alabama. Met Shane a few months ago at a conference in Detroit, Michigan. So welcome, Shane.
Welcome.
Shane has been a field training officer in a police department, a dive team operator and supervisor, also negotiator and supervisor over negotiations, a community mental health officer for over 20 years. He's a coordinator for the Lauderdale Community Mental Health Officer Program. He's a crisis intervention team member. And as you can see, he just brings a wealth of experience. Currently, he sits on the state of Alabama's Crisis Intervention Team Board and the chair of the board for officer wellness for the Crisis Intervention Team of Alabama. He's actually developed a couple of training courses, one titled Dealing with Mentally Ill in Crisis for Law Enforcement, which he's taught for over 10 years to over 3,000 law enforcement officers. And then he's has another course called Cumulative Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder and PTSD in Law Enforcement, which he's taught over 2,000 officers for over 6 years. So although both of my guests, Randy and Shane, have law enforcement experience, what you'll figure out from this conversation we're about to have is that law enforcement is all about teams. It's all about collaboration to protect and serve, and also just to be successful and perform well. So thank you both for joining me today. Let's just get started. I see folks calling in from or joining us from Riverside, San Diego, San Francisco, College Station, and Pennsylvania. So we got some folks on the line. So welcome and thank you all for joining us. I'm going to start with Captain Randy Moody and give him a question right out the box and get him going. So Randy, with your vast experience of leading teams, why is driving trust and collaboration so important for teams to be effective?
Well, first, Greg, thanks for having me on. It's good to be with you and Shane today, and Alexis running the controls behind the scenes. So good to be with you and be a part of this crucial discussion. And thanks to all the attendees joining us. I hope that we'll get some comments and be able to answer some stuff and get this dialogue going. So why, I think, is a much easier answer than how oftentimes, which we're going to get into later. But in law enforcement, as you mentioned, we're always working in teams from 2 officer teams responding to calls to large teams working on policies and after action reports and those kinds of things. And then even cross-functional teams, we're working with folks from different parts of the agency coming together. And then probably our biggest teammate when you talk about teams is working with the community. Yes. So it's so crucial to have that that trust and that collaboration to be a successful law enforcement agency, especially nowadays in this age of creating legitimate law enforcement agencies. And that goes for any corporation, I'm sure, when you're dealing with your clientele. A great illustration is why is in the book Team Intelligence 2.0, that first story about why having that trust and collaboration is so crucial, just their survival and being successful.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I like how you referred to the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book as well. It has a lot of great nuggets, and our team's book as well. And as Randy said, although Randy's a police officer, Shane's a police officer, both have a vast experience in organizational development and teams in general. So that's what this really is about. Shane, anything to add to that? Why is it so important for teams to build trust and collaborate to be effective?
Like Randy said, thank you for having me today. It is a pleasure being here. Trust is the anchor behind all of it. If you don't have that, you don't really have a team. You basically just have a bunch of people working in the same area together. And that is the multiple teams that Randy mentioned, and dealing with the public, who should be your biggest teammate, and sometimes the hardest one to deal with in my profession. But teams, the whole idea of having a team and working as a team, it is just a template, and you place it over anything. The team for a Fortune 500 company is no different than the team that I use at work every day. You have the same values. You have the same, you have to have trust. You have to have communication and connection. It's a principle that is universal.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. In my leadership time in leadership, I would say it like this: that results move at the speed of relationships, but relationships move at the speed of trust. And that's why it's important to drive trust, collaborations in order for teams to be effective. Shane, let me sort of take that a little further. How have you specifically seen trust make a difference in any of the teams that you led, even the crisis intervention teams, and bringing different departments, organizations together to even work together?
When I'm working with my shift, for example, we do a lot of round tabling. We will come back the day after we have done something big, or a lot of times just rudimentary work, and you talk about it as a group. And it is not a team leader and teammates. It is all equal, and everybody has an opinion. Everybody's opinion is valued. And there's a lot of times people don't understand until they see other people's perspectives. So the more you sit and talk, the more you learn about each other, the more you're invested in that group. And, you become one instead of a group of individuals. You are one unit moving together now.
Yeah, actually, Shane, one of our participants on the call is Kevin Borg. He's actually out of the UK, and he's doing Talent Smart, great work in the UK. He actually said the trust equation has to have reliability, credibility, and care. That's so important. Thanks, Kevin, for being on. Randy, let's look at kind of the other side of this topic today. What have you seen specifically regarding collaboration and how it makes a difference in teams being effective?
Yeah, so trust, without trust, you have nothing. With trust comes collaboration. I don't think you're going to have successful collaboration unless you have that trust. And what Shane's talking about is, and then we get into a little bit of the how and how you build that and some of the strategies. but recognizing diversity of thought with your teams. Now, in law enforcement, we often find ourselves with teams that we didn't have any control over creating. In other words, I might take over a new command, and the people that I get are what I get. And so you don't have too many options is to bring in the right people. So you have to, as a team leader, really work with that and build those skills and get that understanding and build that trust. So then that you can have collaboration. And we've seen it in our agency with teams. A couple examples like come to mind are with our force review board or with our policy committee, where we bring people in from different ranks. You talk about diversity of thought, different ranks, different experience, and then also things like diversity in race and culture and sex and those kinds of things that you can bring to the table. So you're tapping into all of those different resources to get all the different sides that are important. And one really important example for us is our crisis response team. This is new to law enforcement when you talk about co-care response to mental health crises, where we're bringing in mental health professionals who have a very different background in dealing with those suffering from mental crisis to law enforcement who, we were trained to enforce the law, right? So there's a delicate balance in being able to protect the vulnerable, to help them, and then also enforce the law. So creating those teams and making sure those teams work together, understanding each other's goal and what we're trying to get to, and setting those norms and goals for that team is crucial. And we've seen some great success, and I'm very proud of what I've seen in our agency.
Yeah, thank you, Randy, for that. If you're you're on the call and you're a part of a company that's working in the private sector, or you're working on virtual teams, you have people on your team that's working remote. One of the things you have to think about is how do you foster open and honest communication when your team members are working remotely or virtual? Also, how do you promote empathy and active listening? And, when your team is dispersed or working remotely or virtually, or even coming into the office working together, how do you promote empathy and active listening? Those are things that are important as you move forward. Let's kind of shift now from sort of looking at trust, driving trust and collaboration from a big picture standpoint and why it's important to how do we do it? And Randy, maybe we'll start with you. How have you actually worked with teams to build trust and drive that collaboration?
I think it first comes from, we talk about a team, and Shane talked about everybody having an equal role, and I think that is so true. But I think you have to have a team leader who possesses high emotional intelligence skills from the very beginning. I think that can lead to helping others in the group. Like I said earlier, if you don't control who comes into the group, you find people that need to strengthen their emotional intelligence skills. I think that's important to help them, but also to set those norms for the team and create a safe space, if you will, for that collaboration, for that voice. And when we get into strategy a little bit, I talk a little bit about the strategies that we use for that. But you have to have a team leader that can help direct that group and get them back on task and create that environment. In law enforcement, we see oftentimes you're dealing with we're a paramilitary group, right? You're dealing with rank structure. You're dealing with situations that if you don't have that trust, and you don't have the feeling that I can open my mouth and speak what I think needs to be spoken without retribution, without fear of having backlash, and then you're not gonna have that collaboration. You're not gonna be successful, and you're not gonna reach those end goals. So I think it starts with that team leader, and then that relationship building, bringing people together to understand who's in the room. We did I've noticed this in class, and we started doing this in our briefings and some of the trainings I do when we do that opening introduction. We ask people, all right, who are you? Where are you from? What's your experience? And then give us one thing that nobody knows about you, or one hobby that you have, or just something way off the wall. And it was amazing, the results, because people would throw something out there, and then you'd find out people in the room have that same connection. And so you're building those relationships, which again builds that trust, and with trust comes collaboration. So I think it's so important to have that team leader. And then you talk a little bit about cross-functional teams. You're talking about, especially for law enforcement, one of the biggest ones that come to mind is patrol officers working in conjunction with dispatch. And I know, and I apologize for some of our guests who may not understand that relationship. I'm sure it can relate to corporate America, where you have two entities coming together. I think the key to that is understanding the role of the other group. walk
like
a
that.
mile in their shoes. I've sent officers to go work or sit in dispatch or go do investigations and understand it, so that you're a little less inclined to be critical, snarky, if you will. You're more inclined to work with them when you know them better. So I think it's so important to have that good team leader that drives that team forward, helps everybody build those relationships, increase your emotional intelligence skills, and then that walk a mile in someone else's shoes to success.
I like that, Randy. You said two things that jumped out to me. You said just ask something interesting or something fun. When I actually teach the different trainings from Talent Smart, I actually start out asking people to tell me their favorite movie.
Right.
And it really creates a great atmosphere of trust, humor, and collaboration, even in a team environment. You also said something about, you mentioned the briefings and how briefings bring about collaboration. At a private sector company that I spent a few years with, we had something we called a daily huddle, where we would just come together really quick, kind of like a football team. You just huddle up, check in on one another, make sure each other are good, and then we break off and do our day's work. Shane, can you sort of add to that? What are some of the things you've done to just drive sort of trust and collaboration with teams?
Sure. I agree with everything Randy said 100%. Two other points that I feel kind of go hand in hand with it. You have to have accountability, not only to yourself, but to the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the good times and the bad times. You have to own every bit of it, and you have to share it equally. You can't place some failure on just one person, because a team is not individuals. At the same time, the heartbeat of a team is the communication. If you don't have effective, strong, honest communication, you're not going to go as far as you could. You're not even going to get close to your potential. When everybody is able to communicate, good, bad, up, down, hey, are you having a bad day today? Is there something I can do to help? Let me take this task off of you. That's when the trust gets strengthened.
Mm-hmm.
When you take it a step further than just, hey, I have to be working here with you. I want to be here with you.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or ugly, I'm here.
Yeah.
And the simple way that I tell my guys to do it, I said, as you're working throughout the day, if you're thinking of time management, you just set this template over what you're doing. Am I construction, destruction, or sitting still? Because that's the only three things you're doing. I'm doing something that is productive, I'm doing something that is destructive, or I'm just sitting here watching the world go by. And if you look at what you're doing right now, and could I be doing something else? Could I be doing something to help somebody else, or help myself? A lot of people forget self-maintenance. You have to take breaks, or the machine breaks.
Shane, I love that. I remember when I met you at that conference, you asked me to pull out my phone. And right at I had a booth. I'm working. You asked me to pull out my phone and look at my calendar to see if I had anything on my calendar that was just for me. And you talked about sort of getting that recharge. It's important, even though we're working as a team, to make sure you get your individual recharge so that the team functions better. I also love what you said. You said, how do you create an environment where people want to do what you're doing? I share when I train Victor Vroom, Vroom, in the expectancy theory, says it this way: people will do what they can do when they want to. I'm going to say that again. People will do what they can do when they want to. So you're right. Team effectiveness is, how do you get, as a leader, that team to work efficiently and effective and want to do what you're having them to do. So thank you both for sharing those answers. Randy, you're one of our certified trainers in emotional intelligence and have been responsible for the Aurora Police Department Academy and organizational development, even some leadership development. So you bring a wealth of opportunities there. How have you seen strategies of emotional intelligence fitting into building trust and collaboration?
Yeah, so I thanks for the question. When I got the team intelligence book and started reading it and started seeing the strategies, you start picking out some of those things that you've already been doing, right? And some that stuck out to me, and Shane mentioned it, own your mistakes, own the wins, own the losses as a team, right? It's like a football team. Your team loses, it's never just one player. One player may have had a big mistake that, at the wrong time, but it is a team effort. Setting team norms, I think, is crucial too. I loved one in watching Gene Greaves talk in another webinar about the reply all function. Don't reply all function. So just one of those setting the norms. Reply all gets so many people in trouble. Yeah. And encouraging that team bonding. We've been talking a lot about that, but there was two that I highlighted that I wanted to talk about when it comes to strategies that I think are maybe a little less obvious that I think are so crucial. And one of those is be thoughtful, whether divided or united. When you're divided, you want to make sure, especially, and this is where that team leader becomes important, is making sure that we're seeing things from others' perspectives, going back to that diversity of thought, understanding where other people are coming from. That divisiveness, that seems to me like an easy one to address. But the one where the team is united, I think, is where problems can sneak up on you and things can fall through the cracks. And the reason I say that is because if
Randy froze on my screen, but I love, what he said, unity. Oh, there we go. You're back. Yeah. Randy, unity is so important. One of the things that I love about emotional intelligence and specifically Talent Smart's training program is you find things, Randy, that you can apply at work and with your team. But I say EQ travels. It goes home with you. And that same unity you can create with your team is the same unity you want to create in your home with the people that you love the most and that matter most to you on a daily basis. So I love that. Did you want to finish, Randy?
Yeah, so I'm not sure where I cut out, but when I was talking about when the team is united, sometimes you get that team all on the same page right away. I think that's where problems can sneak up on you and things can fall through the crack. And what I was starting to say was that, what perspectives haven't we heard? I was reading somewhere, and I couldn't remember where I saw it, where there were teams that actually assigned somebody to be the devil's advocate for the day. Before the meeting, to constantly be coming up with, what about this? And I've had that happen where I was the one that said, man, this all sounds great, and I hate to bring it up, but if we don't address this is going to be a problem. And it took the team in another direction. But I think it's so crucial that that you do that. And then the second one I wanted to touch on, which I think is crucial, is surface the quieter feelings. Wow. And that the strategy there talks about make sure you're reaching out to the quiet voices or the silent voices on the team that aren't saying anything. And I think this helps repel that mob mentality. And it goes back again to creating an environment where everybody feels like they can speak up, even if it's contrary to what the majority in the room say. And it takes real courage to be that one voice in the room that says, wow, you guys are all here, but I'm over here. And you have two choices. You can let it lay there, and maybe that's the one thing that destroys or damages your team's success, or you can have the courage to speak up. And you have to have that trust again to be able to allow those voices. So as a team leader, we had a great sergeant years ago, going back to the briefings, that he made sure we went around the room and asked everybody in the room by name, do you have anything? Do you have anything? Yeah, and just singled them out and gave them the opportunity, if nothing else. And so the things that come out of those kinds of strategies can be eye-opening and so crucial to your success as a team.
Wow, I love those. And Shane, I'm getting ready to give you a chance in a moment to talk about a couple of strategies that you can think about to drive trust and collaboration. But Randy, you said something. You said bring out the silent voices in the room. And that's emotional intelligence all through and through. Because sometimes we talk about the introvert versus extrovert on the team. And because you're labeling somebody, it makes it seem like one is better than the other, and you're labeled. So I love the way you say it, which is another way rather than extrovert, introvert. It's just bring out the silent voices in the room and give everybody an opportunity to not always have a vote, but to have a voice. And it really does help teams be effective. You talked about at the end and that sergeant who ask everybody at the end of the shift, hey, you have anything to say? One of the practices that I've used in leadership, in leading teams, is I don't end the call or a conversation or a meeting without saying these two things. Do you need more from me, or do you need less from me? They have been my power questions at the end of a conversation, and it brings about teamwork. Shane, anything? Go ahead,
I'm sorry. A lot of times too, as the leader in the room, if I'm, at the end, I'll say, does anybody want to call BS?
Yeah.
Does anybody want to call bull? And I give them that opportunity. I try to create that environment where, look, I'm okay with you challenging me. And then there's this silence. And then I tell them I'll embrace the silence. And because you have to. And now the key to that is that if somebody says something that you don't really like, if you smack them down at their knees, then you'll never get that again. So you have to be prepared as that leader in the room for that team to allow that to happen, and then work through whatever comes of it. But I always like doing that because I want people to have that environment, that safe space, if you will, to be able to challenge me as the team leader.
Yeah, Kimberly says, I love that, more or less. I'll use that. I love it. Shane, I'm going to follow back up, Randy, where you said something about calling BS. I'm going to come back to that. But Shane, what are your thoughts there for some strategies that you have used or suggest to specifically drive trust and collaboration?
Well, on the heels of what Randy said, on the team norms list that I was looking over, it says listen until the end, no talking over the person who is talking. And why that is so important, a lot of people get lost in, are you listening to respond or are you listening to understand?
There you go.
If you are just sitting here to hear yourself talk, that is not teamwork either. The smartest person in the room, the best idea in the room may be in the janitor. And if you never ask him, you've lost your opportunity. If everybody has a voice, that's where the best come from. You don't ever get anything good in a comfort zone. So just like Randy said, call me out. If you've got a better idea, I want to hear it because I want the best for us. You have to be willing to say, my idea may stink. Somebody bring it to the table. That's equity.
I knew I was going to enjoy this time with you all. I see that, Nadia, I'm about to come to your question. Randy, I wanted to point out something that you talked about. You said lean into discomfort and be willing to call BS as a team. When I train emotional intelligence, especially to law enforcement, I have this section that I call BS. And I've tried to create new neural pathways because emotional intelligence is about the brain. Emotions aren't good or bad. They're just data. So I call BS brain systems, belief systems, and blind spots. So when y'all are calling BS out there on your teams, talk about the things, our brain systems, our own patterns, our experiences, our upbringing, our culture, our education. We can call BS on that. Our blind spots, things we don't see because we always done something a particular way. And then our belief system. So just want to throw that out. And Nadia said, as we kind of pause a little bit, Nadia said, what if a person keeps talking over others? I need to respectfully draw a boundary. Nadia, I'll give Randy and Shane a chance to respond to that. But I do think that's important. I actually think that's what Shane is talking about. When someone keeps talking over someone, are they actually really listening? Active listening is so important. We actually do an exercise in our emotional intelligence training where we have you, talk to somebody for 90 seconds and they just listen and don't say anything. And they have to pay attention to how their body is doing. And maybe they just want to ask questions. It's harder to listen than you think. And so I do believe that's important. Shane or Randy, any comments to Nadia's question? What if people keeps talking over you or over others?
I believe that would fall more toward the leader of the group, because the leader of the group has to establish the boundaries. You hold the mission statement, which is the roadmap. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And, what parameters are we going to stay within? If somebody is encroaching on someone else's time to talk, you have to be a good enough leader to look at them and say, we're going to let them have their time, respect them how they've respected you, and a leader should be able to draw boundaries and should be able to say things that are uncomfortable sometimes. To be an effective leader, you have to protect the group and the integrity of the group.
Yeah. Thank you, Shane. Randy, you said something at the beginning of your last response. You started out by saying set team norms.
Yeah. I was just going to say to Shane's point, and I've got the strategies right here with me, but under that emotional management strategies, that first one is set team norms. I mean, that's that is one of the things that you have to do right away that I don't think we do a very good job of.
Yeah.
Setting the team norms, and then it talks about enforcing them lightly. And we talk about scolding in private and praising in public. But there are times that you have to be a little more forceful as a leader and shut somebody down, because I've seen it where they're right over the top of the other person, and then you can have that offline conversation. So yeah, absolutely, setting those up front. And I think the other thing too, to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, is making sure you understand what the goal is or the objective for the team, whatever it is. I've been in meetings where we've gone back and forth for 10, 15 minutes, and then finally somebody says, what are we trying to accomplish? What is it we're even here for? And then once you start getting that focus, I think that'll help direct the conversation in the right way. So you eliminate a little bit of that back and forth and talking over each other. But I tell you, it's a skill that I've had to work on. I self-admit that listening and thinking about what I'm going to say next. And that's been a journey for me to get better at that.
Yeah. And practice is a good thing. The way you make something a habit, and a habit is something you do without thinking. So the only way you're going to create something that you do without thinking is to practice it and get better at it. I would like to say to you, Nadia, as well, when something like that occurs, I do think a wonderful solution or strategy is setting team norms. And I think so many times in leadership and leading teams, we set team norms, but we don't revisit them. And what we've done at Talent Smart in a number of the projects that I've been on, and even our diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging group, what we do is we read those norms or revisit those norms every time we come together. And I know you may not be able to do it every time, but maybe once a week you revisit those norms. Maybe once a month you say, here are what our team norms are. So that's good stuff there.
Well, Greg, I think it's important too, as the team leader, to make sure those people in the room understand that you can hold me accountable to those norms too. I think Shane talked about it. Yep. You got to hold me to account as well. I think that's crucial. But
I think that's good stuff. Nadia sort of led us into my next question, or a good segue. What's the risk? What is the risk of teams not focusing on building trust? If you've ever experienced that in your careers, what's the risk?
Yeah, I'll take that. To start, I've seen it where if there's not trust, you get into it's kind of like middle school it's kind of like middle school. Maybe you have people holding things close to the vest. They're not interested in the group. They're interested in themselves. It's sad to say we see it in our professional life sometimes, but the backstabbing, the behind the scenes that goes on, unfortunately, sometimes without that trust and collaboration is unfortunate. So without it, you're never going to reach those goals. And then you just create a situation where there's low morale. Folks on the team don't feel like they had a say, they weren't listened to. And that can destroy trust. It can destroy an agency. It can destroy morale. So I again, going back to, it's so crucial to make sure we have that.
And thank you, Randy. Shane, I don't know if you and Randy can see, but Luke on the screen talked about the importance of getting that team oriented to the purpose. And Luke, what I loved is how you kept looping the purpose back in to the team's success. It's important for the norms. It's important for how our actions serve the purpose. It's important how you deal with disagreements. You come back to the purpose, and it's sort of that center hub on the spoke. As different things, problem solving, disagreements, conflict come up, when you come back to that center hub of purpose, it can be the compass that drives you to effectiveness and efficiency as a team. So thank you, Luke, for jumping in and sharing that as well. Shane, any comments or thoughts on what are the risk of not focusing on building trust as a team?
Yeah. And this goes to the morale of the group. You know, if everybody understands that they have an equal stake in this, and everybody realizes that we are only as strong as the weakest member of our team. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly wanting to help each other. And what I try to instill in my guys, you know, we have to do a lot of unpleasant things, but you worked very hard to get to do this job. So you don't look at it as happiness is a destination. You choose to be happy during the trip. You know, you control how you get there. You know, if you look and say, I'm going to be happy when I get to here, you're missing a lot of great things in the middle. You know, happiness is not a destination. It's the way. So, you know, you got to keep your finger on the pulse of the mood of the group. Yeah. And, you know, if it is faltering, you know, you help everybody get on course and help everybody enjoy even the bad times. Yeah. You know, hey, it's not all going to be great every day. You know, you're going to have bad stuff, but you acknowledge it, you accept it, and you go through it together. And when you're finished, you look back and say, look how good we handled this. And you move to the next problem.
Shane, that's a good one. On that list of team strategies, one of my favorite strategies is remember the wins. Remember the wins. And Shane, that's what you're talking about right there. You go back, you look at your challenges as a team, and then you think about and sort of celebrate how you overcame them. Mm-hmm. And then you're on to the next challenge. I love that. Don't forget, leaders that are on this call, to remember the wins. Sometimes we're going from challenge, to conflict, to problem, and we don't pause. We don't reflect to remember the wins. Thank you both. Now, we're going to bring this thing home. You all have done a wonderful job. Let me say thank you to the folks that are in the chat. You guys have kept this going for Randy and Shane and I to keep it going. So thank you all for that. As we close out this session today, I just want to remind everyone who has been tuning in to this discussion that may have been thinking about how might you bring this solution, Team EQ, to your organization, or to just ground your organization in EQ. I want to just ask you, don't forget or don't hesitate to reach out to our organization, Talent Smart, for more information about our assessments or our programs. We're a global organization, and we would love to be a part of your solutions. We're dropping our contact information now. It's already there. Quick, Alexis behind the scenes is working, and it's already in the chat box. If you want to more information, again, working with Shane and what's going on in Alabama and across the country, especially with CIT trained folks, and working with Randy and Aurora and other places around the country as well. Emotional intelligence works. It's for our everyday life as well. I want to remind you before we sign off that we'll be back on November 30th. Will be our next session of this episode of Emotional Intelligence for Your Everyday Life. We'll be discussing employee wellness with a focus on stress. And that's perfect as we get through the holidays and the end of the year. I'm going to say it one more time. We'll be talking about employee well-being with a focus on stress. So until then, I want to thank Randy. I want to thank Shane, my two friends that are in the EQ space, helping people have an impact on others. We want to say thank you for being a part of today's discussion. And remember, EQ is for your everyday life. I'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.